Another interesting story that's been going on in the news this week is the Pope's visit to Cuba there. You have any views on that?
It's amazing to me. From the atheist standpoint, what's going on there is quite amazing. You've got people from America being allowed to go to Cuba and visit for various reasons. Of course, the press and everybody else, but there's a requirement. If you don't already have family there, I'm not exactly sure on the laws on it, but there's a requirement that your visit there be for the purposes of this religious event. And of course, to an atheist, well, this is rather unfair. Those of us who would like to go to Cuba in the first place. Now, of course, I don't know many people who would, but the situation between Castro and the Pope is rather interesting in that politically, both of them are helping each other out. And the Pope is coming down against the U.S. embargo, and this puts the White House in an interesting position. But I think one of the most important things to remember about this is that religion is alive and well in Cuba. It is not something that has gone so far underground that it doesn't exist or does not have the amount of religious protections inside the own home, the home of the person who is religious. But another thing to remember about Cuba is that Christianity, or the Christianity we know of over here as being dominant over here, is not the number one religion in Cuba. Right. The number one religion in Cuba is Santeria.
Right.
And if most of your Catholics who love the Pope in the United States knew what they did in Santeria, it'd be a little bit more questionable as to why the Pope would be going there in the first place. Simply because it is so widespread in Cuba. And I tell you, when we see the pictures on CNN, that's fine. We can see that and see them doing some rather interesting things. But as far as Catholicism, it's a lot beyond that. What do you think?
Yes, it's Pope mania going on right now. Everywhere I turn around, it's on the newspaper, it's on the news, and everything else. It's turned into one big PR thing for the Catholic Church, and I feel like the press and the media in general is being duped by the Catholic Church. But let's get some opinions from our guest here. Harry?
I was raised a Catholic.
I didn't know that.
Well, I was. And if there's anything that should turn you off religion, it's a good early education in Catholicism. The Pope in Cuba is a rather ridiculous event in many ways. I feel sympathy for the people who are seduced into believing this nonsense, but it's really difficult to determine why Castro wanted the Pope. Obviously, for his own needs. And it is, in a sense, strange that the Pope should go there.
Right.
I mean, he's making a trip into a communist hell. But there he is.
David, anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, I think Castro and the Pope belong to each other. They really are, in their history and what they represent, totalitarian. Religion doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. It's quite, I don't know, here's the Pope with his centuries of tradition behind him, representing an organization that has persisted through all kinds of political structures. I suppose he would look at Castro as saying, well, as small fry, trying to take the sting out of the last communist nation, showing that he can tolerate him. Yeah, it's a mystery. With you, Harry, why Castro would allow him to would bring him in.
Well, let us consider the Church's great record of accuracy in things past. First of all, many hundreds of years ago, the current belief was that the earth was flat.
All right.
And it was a heresy. That is, it was heretical to spread information that was otherwise. And eventually the church came around to the belief that the earth was round. Well, that was one thing, but the next big belief was that the sun, the stars, all the planets rotated about the earth. And when this was proved to be a fallacy, the church eventually came around. One interesting thing, while fundamental Christians are espousing the literal interpretation of the Bible is literal fact, the Pope has backed away from the creation by indicating that evolution is a fact. And with a history of so many wrongs in the past, how is one to believe that the Pope is right in this instance? Do you have any thoughts there, David? Or?
Well, it seems to be image. It's all degenerated to a matter of image anymore. Pope's trying to make headway by showing that we are the new Catholic tolerant church, and Castro has his interest. He knows that a large part of his people are Roman Catholic, and both of them trying to spruce up their public image.
That's an interesting comparison between the Catholic Church and Cuba and Cuba's government, trying to figure out who is the more tolerant, the more lenient of the two. And of course, anybody who knows much about world history knows the Catholic Church has been around for over 1,000 years and has been persecuting people who disagree quite brutally. And
it's hard to change the camera. Keep going.
As far as communist Cuba goes, we all know, of course, that communism is not more than 100 years old yet. And as far as communist Cuba goes, of course, again, a very young situation with their government. And if Castro was in his middle ages when he started it, and now is at this age and is still doing quite healthy, this is something that's going to be around for a while. But I think they're using each other. Of course, there's a lot of Catholics in Cuba, and there are a lot of people in the rest of the world who would love to see Fidel Castro be nicer to his people and give them a little religious freedom, a little more anyway. Well, you know, one hand washes the other, and now the Pope, I believe, has left Cuba, is currently right now not in Cuba anymore, and you've got a lot of Catholics in Cuba who are real happy with Fidel Castro, and then you've got a whole lot of people in the rest of the world who are real happy with the Pope, and vice versa. Where does this leave the atheist in his experience and opinion? Well, it's an interesting quandary for us, but I tell you what, we would love to have another country right next to the United States that did not allow such incredible religious persecution of non-believers as what takes place in many countries, including the United States. But this, too, is also disappearing fast. And when the Pope goes over there and has a hand waiting for him in friendliness and happiness, well, it's great that they're at peace, but we would also like to see a little more freedom from religion, too.